All right, let's do this. Ready for a deep dive into how humans are impacting the environment?
Always ready to tackle these big topics.
Yeah, we've got some slides here that are, well, kind of intense.
Just looking them over.
Yeah, they really paint a picture, you know?
Definitely striking.
It's urbanization, deforestation, pollution in all its forms, and then, of course, climate change looming over it all.
A whole picture.
And as we dig into these slides, I think a good starting point is to ask ourselves, have you ever considered how, like, your everyday choices might be contributing to all of this?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. It's easy to feel powerless, with these huge global problems.
For sure. But these slides really, I think, help to connect the dots.
They make it real.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think slide one just hits you right off the bat.
That image is powerful.
Oh, absolutely. It's like this lush, vibrant forest full of life, and then bam, just sliced in half.
And on the other side,
Totally barren wasteland.
it's a stark contrast.
It really makes you pause and think, like, wow, this is the impact we're having.
Yeah, that line between forest and no forest, that's happening all over the planet.
It's not just a picture, it's reality.
And that's just one example. These slides really unpack, all these ripple effects from pollution to deforestation.
But slide two, man, it really drives home the urgency of all this.
It does make you think.
Because it's not some far-off threat, Human actions have already had a massive impact on the environment.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that this isn't just about saving polar bears or whatever.
Right.
This is about us,
Our future, exactly.
our health, our well-being.
Okay, so let's zoom in on one piece of this, urbanization. Slide three, it's this insane photo of a sprawling city.
I know the one you're talking about.
Skyscrapers, highways, the whole 9 yards.
Classic city shot.
But it's also covered in this thick layer of smog.
Can't forget the smog.
It's a powerful image because it shows how people are drawn to cities for opportunity, but then there's this whole other side to it.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Because cities are hubs for innovation, right?
Of course, that's the draw.
Jobs, education, healthcare, all of that.
Right, but that rapid growth,
It has consequences.
huge ones, it puts a strain on resources, infrastructure, everything.
It's like trying to fit everyone into a clown car. Eventually, something's got to give.
Exactly, and then you see things like overcrowding, pollution, inequality. All these problems start to surface.
So the big question is, how do we balance this need for opportunity with protecting the planet?
Well, sustainable urban planning has got to be a big part of that.
How do we design cities to be better for both people and the planet?
Yeah, we can't just keep paving over paradise.
Which leads us right into deforestation, slide 4. Man, it's heartbreaking.
That was rough.
It's a forest floor that's just a graveyard of stumps.
Happening all over.
It's crazy because we're essentially wiping out these giant carbon sinks.
They do so much for us.
Forests are like the planet's lungs.
Exactly. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, but when we chop them down, all that carbon goes right back into the air.
And then the planet heats up even more.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's mind-boggling that forests cover like 30% of Earth's land, but we're losing them at such an alarming rate.
The consequences are huge, and not just for the climate.
Oh, right. It's way bigger than that.
You get soil erosion, which leads to flooding, and then the loss of biodiversity, habitats destroyed.
It's like dominoes falling. One thing leads to another.
Exactly, a chain reaction.
All right, let's shift gears to pollution. Slide 5. Whoa, it's a cityscape dominated by these industrial smokestacks just spewing pollution into the air.
Yeah, that one is a visual gut punch.
It's like, is this what we're doing to our planet?
Really makes you think,
It's not just air pollution either, right?
oh, no, it's everywhere.
It's in our water, our land.
It's like a disease impacting everything.
And it has all sorts of nasty side effects, making us sick, disrupting ecosystems, and then, of course, contributing to climate change.
Okay, how it all goes together.
I know it can feel overwhelming,
Totally.
but we're not completely powerless, right?
Not at all.
We've got to tackle this from multiple angles.
Absolutely. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach.
Individual choices, government regulations, and then, hopefully, new technologies can help us turn things around.
I think that's the key, finding new solutions.
Okay, so let's unpack this pollution beast a bit more, starting with air pollution. Slide 8. Man, it's a city completely shrouded in smog.
It's like something out of a dystopian movie.
It's a stark reminder of what happens when we release all these pollutants into the atmosphere.
And it's not just what you can see.
Right, there's so much we can't see.
Tiny particles, gases, even biological molecules. all floating around in the air we breathe.
And it gets even more complicated when you start talking about primary and secondary pollutants.
Right, it's like layers of a cake.
Yeah, like the primary pollutants are the basic ingredients, things like carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide,
And those usually come directly from a source.
like those smokestacks we saw.
Exactly, a point source.
And then you have the secondary pollutants, which form when those primary pollutants start reacting with each other in the atmosphere.
So they're like the finished cake, the product of those initial ingredients,
Right, and that gives you things like smog and ground level ozone.
which are even more harmful.
Slide 6 actually shows a close-up of one of those smokestacks, and it lists some of the usual suspects when it comes to primary pollutants.
Big offenders.
Carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and VOCs.
Those VOCs, volatile organic compounds, those are interesting.
What's up with those?
They're released from a lot of everyday things.
Like what?
Paint, cleaning products, new furniture even.
Really? So they're not just coming from big factories and stuff.
No, they're all around us.
That new car smell everyone loves, that's VOCs, right?
Yep, and as pleasant as it might seem, it's not as harmless as we think.
Okay, so we've got these primary pollutants floating around, and then they start cooking up in the atmosphere, and that leads to
Slide 7, which shows us a smog-filled city.
a classic example of what happened.
And one of the big culprits here is photochemical smog.
Photochemical smog. What's special about that?
Well, Slide 9 gives us a good visual. You see a hazy cityscape with cars on a highway.
Ah, so traffic is a major contributor here.
Big time. It forms when sunlight reacts with nitrogen oxides and those VOCs we were talking about.
And it's not just ugly. This stuff is bad for our health.
Oh, for sure. Respiratory problems, eye irritation, and it can damage plants too.
Okay, so we've got this hazy, unhealthy air situation going on. And then we add water pollution to the mix.
Another layer of the problem.
Slide 10 shows a river choked with plastic waste.
A sadly familiar sight.
It's a powerful image. It shows how what we do on land doesn't stay on land.
It all flows downstream, literally.
It's like we're just flushing our problems away, but they end up in our rivers, lakes, oceans.
All sorts of harmful stuff. Chemicals, trash, sewage.
And it's not just an eyesore. This is a major threat to human health, wildlife, entire ecosystem.
Absolutely. Water is essential for life, and we're polluting it at an alarming rate.
So this is where things like proper waste management and strict regulations come in.
We can't treat our waterways like dumping grounds.
We need to protect this precious resource. And speaking of dumping grounds,
Slide 11, the landfill.
the overflowing landfill, yeah. That brings us to the issue of hazardous waste, which is like pollution on steroids.
We're not talking about your average household trash here.
This is the serious stuff.
Toxic chemicals, radioactive materials, medical waste, things that can pose a serious risk to human health and the environment.
And if it's not handled properly, it can contaminate everything: soil, water, air.
It's a ticking time bomb.
This is where those international agreements and regulations become crucial.
We need global solutions for a global problem.
Okay, let's talk about something you might not hear about every day. Acid mine drainage.
Now that's an interesting one.
Slide 12 shows a mining site with this crazy bright orange runoff.
Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, it's caused by mining activities that expose certain types of rocks to air and water.
And what happens is these rocks release sulfuric acid.
And that acid is bad news.
Really bad news. It dissolves heavy metals, making the water toxic.
So it's a major threat to aquatic life.
It can wipe out entire ecosystems, and the recovery process can take decades, even centuries.
And this actually ties back to the issue of acid rain, which we saw earlier on slide 13.
Yeah, I remember that one, the leaf with the acidic droplets.
Acid rain is caused by those sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide emissions, usually from burning fossil fuels.
And it has similar effects as acid mine drainage, acidifying soil and water, damaging plants, aquatic life.
It's like we're attacking the environment from all sides.
It really shows how interconnected these problems are.
It's sobering for sure, but I think before we spiral into despair, let's shift gears a bit and talk about solutions.
That's what I'm here for.
Okay, so we've seen the damage, but now I want to know, like, what can we actually do about it? Slide 14 has all these discussion questions, and
Okay.
one that really stands out to me, it asks how individuals can adopt sustainable practices.
The individual versus the system?
Yeah, because it's easy to feel like my little actions aren't going to make a dent in these huge problems.
I get that. It's like, can changing my light bulbs really solve climate change?
Exactly.
But I think it's important to remember that if everyone felt that way,
Yeah.
nothing would change. Those individual actions, they add up.
Okay, that's a good point. I needed that pep talk.
We got to stay positive.
But honestly, like, Where do we even start? What are some concrete things people can do?
Well, for starters, we got to tackle those single-use plastics.
Okay, plastics. Everyone talks about plastics.
Think about it. That plastic water bottle you buy, that could take hundreds of years to decompose.
Crazy.
So simple things like bringing your own reusable bottle,
Makes sense.
using a cloth shopping bag, ditching plastic straws.
Those little swaps can add up.
Absolutely. And then think about your energy use at home.
Okay, at home, what can we do there?
Turning off lights when you leave a room, using energy-efficient appliances, even lowering your thermostat a degree or two in the winter.
All those little things.
They make a difference. And then there's transportation.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Cars are a huge contributor to air pollution.
I love my car, but I know it's not exactly helping the planet.
Maybe try walking or biking more often. Take public transport if you can. Carpool with friends.
Those are all good options.
And, it can't just be on individuals. We need businesses and industries to step up, too.
Oh, absolutely. But how do we get them to change their ways?
Well, I think consumers have a lot of power.
How so?
When we support businesses that are prioritizing sustainability, we send a message.
So it's about voting with our wallets.
Exactly. Choosing eco-friendly products, supporting companies that are walking the walk.
But it can't stop there, right? We need governments to get involved, too.
100%. We need those strong policies, regulations, international agreements.
Hold polluters accountable. Create incentives for sustainable practices.
That's how we create real systemic change.
And we can't forget about innovation.
Oh, that's crucial.
We need to invest in new technologies, new solutions.
Renewable energy, sustainable agriculture. There's so much potential there.
So it's a multifaceted approach. Individual actions, government policies, technological innovation.
It's a whole system that needs to shift.
Okay, so we've got all these things we can do, but how do we get everyone on board?
Because not everyone is as passionate about the environment as we are.
That's for sure.
I think education is key.
Education. Yeah.
The more people understand the science, the more likely they are to take action.
So it's about breaking down these complex issues in a way that everyone can understand.
Exactly. And sharing that knowledge with others.
We can all be ambassadors for change.
I love that. Ambassadors for change.
What about advocacy? Those environmental groups, they seem to be making a difference.
Oh, for sure. Supporting those organizations, contacting your elected officials, speaking up at town hall meetings.
All those things matter.
Every voice counts.
It's inspiring to hear about all these different ways we can get involved.
There's something for everyone.
But I gotta be honest, some days it feels overwhelming.
I hear you. These are global challenges.
It's easy to get discouraged.
It is. But every action, no matter how small, it's a step in the right direction.
I like that. Focus on what we can control.
And remember, we're not alone in this. Millions of people around the world are fighting for a more sustainable future.
There's power in collective action.
Absolutely. This deep dive, it's been a roller coaster, right?
We've seen some pretty grim stuff.
But also some inspiring examples of resilience.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we have a choice.
A choice.
You can continue down this destructive path, or we can choose a different future.
A healthier planet for ourselves and future generations.
And that choice, we make it every day.
With every action we take.
So the more we educate ourselves, support sustainable businesses, advocate for change,
the better choices we'll make.
Choices that will lead to a brighter future.
That's what it's all about.
I'm feeling a bit more optimistic now, thanks for that. But before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about all the negative impacts, but what about the positive side?
The good stuff.
What are some examples of human ingenuity that have actually helped the environment?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think that's something for our listeners to ponder.
I like it.
It's important to remember that we have the power to solve these problems.
Absolutely.
There are already so many amazing examples of people restoring ecosystems, developing clean technologies, creating a more sustainable world.
It's about finding those stories of hope and innovation.
And using them as fuel to keep going.
Because we need everyone working together if we're going to turn this ship around.
Well said. It's not about doom and gloom. It's about solutions and empowering each other.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the human impact on the environment. It's been a journey.
A deep dive for sure.
But hopefully you learned something new today.
And maybe feel a little inspired to make a difference.
Even small actions, right?
They can have a big impact, especially when we all do our part.
So we're all in this together. Keep learning.
Keep exploring. Keep taking action.
Until next time.